You can apply animation effects to your videos or still images using many of the different tools in Photoshop. So here we go. Well, here's an image with basic layers. I've gone ahead and made a few options that I can manipulate. So here's a background copy, and here's the pumpkin just masked out. And we're going to use that to create some animation. Now, animation, in some respects, is just frames moving frame to frame, and they change over time. And so I'm going to go ahead and make a duplicate of this frame. If I click here, I just get an easy duplicate of it. That's great. And I could keep adding duplicates. And if I did something just simple like remove this on the middle frame, I've got animation. So in some respects, that's how easy it's going to be. I'm going to go back and delete this frame here, and I can just start with this second one. Now, an option you can take advantage of is a tween command, and it's in-betweening. It allows you to create multiple animations and has some effect like, well, let's just take a look at it, like changing the position. That could change the opacity or some effect, perhaps a gradient or a drop shadow effect that you have on it. I just had one item selected, so I'm going to start by telling it how many frames I want to use. I'm going to have 10, and I'm going to be able to manipulate all 3 of these effects. So go ahead and click on OK, and Photoshop has just added for me 10 frames. Now, right now, it's not doing anything. If I go to the very first frame and I play them, it doesn't look very exciting. So let's stop the play mode here. And what we're going to do is make a few changes. I'm going to start by going to this last frame. And remember, this is the background. This layer represents the background. So I'm going to change that opacity to, let's say, 15%. And you can start seeing behind it. And now if I reselect all these frames and choose the tween command, Photoshop has automatically added for me the opacity blend mode, so I don't have to do that myself. And let's start by just going ahead and playing it. And I'm easily amused, so that's fun for me. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add some motion with this pumpkin. So it's going to dance a little bit up and down. And I'll start by taking this pumpkin, and I'm actually going to go to the middle one here and move it up a little bit. So you can see how it's moving it up. And I'm going to use the tween command of just these frames. Click on tween, and you can see how it's moving up there. And then I'm going to have it actually not just move back down, but kind of jump over a little bit. Maybe even nudge it just a little bit there. And I got to select these items and finish the tween. And let's see what we've got. Oh boy. I'm going to go ahead and stop that. We could also change the timing of these transitions here. There's a default time, or you could add some in. Again, if I select all of them, I could even change the transitions. And here, we'll really slow it down, and you can start seeing it could take a while for this to play. There you go. Enjoy it, right? And the other option is you can control the looping. So it's going to be forever, just 3 times once, or you might have some other scenario in there that you want to play. And then you can put this animation on YouTube or on the website. Now let's go to another image that's using timeline. So here's a lot of video clips, and it has a timeline. And I've already set up a separate video, and I added some type in here. And if I make this type into a smart object, I can easily add some effects to it, similar to what we did with tweening, because they're automatic. So I'm going to go ahead and select this layer, and in my layer menu, I can go to Smart Objects, Convert to Smart Object, okay? And then I'm going to make sure that my playhead is in the right position. It's kind of like selecting the correct frame. And I'm going to expand this video group. Oops, here we go. Expand the video group. And I can see some options like transform, opacity, style. And when I click on transform, that stopwatch rather, I'm creating what's called a keyframe. And that keyframe is basically saying, remember what it looks like here. I'm actually going to get my move tool, And I'm going to position this text kind of just off the edge here. Okay. And it's remembering the transform of the smart object. So now I'm going to position my playhead, move it out. Incidentally, that black had to do with this fade effect that we had here. And I still have my layer selected, and I'm going to move this kind of off to the side so that it fades out there. And Photoshop automatically added another keyframe. So watch what happens in me, especially when going backwards here. But if I start playing forward, you can see that effect. And it's actually moving up just a little bit too. Now you can adjust it, but the tricky part is getting it right on that keyframe and making sure you're on the right layer. And because I'm a little bit, because I'm off in the canvas, it's hard to see that. But there we go. And I'll go ahead and playhead backwards, and you can see how it's moving up. Pretty fun. Now I'm going to also bring in another object and take advantage of some motion features. So let's go ahead and just do File, Place. And by doing this, we can place in a image as a smart object, because we have to be a smart object anyway. And I'll put it inside the same group. Oh, it's making me first commit to the object. So let's go ahead and size that. Just press Enter. And I'll move that into the same group. Right now, because it's a separate group, it's going to be playing, it can be played simultaneously. But if I move it into the existing group, it'll now be played sequentially. And I can change the out time and in time there just real quickly. And so it's going to be playing sequentially, and again, the stacking order makes a difference. So there we go. And with this image, it's a still, so I can play it as long as I want. I think what I'll do is I will have it play a little less. These are pretty short videos, but you get the idea. And I'm going to position my playhead where I want it to be. This is still replying to the waterworks. So let's go ahead and move that back there because that's part of that. Yep. Position my playhead here. And I still have this object opened, but it's working with these different transforms opacity. I could add some different keyframes. What I'm going to do instead is right-click and change this object from no motion to pan and zoom. And I can kind of fiddle with some of these options in there, or just leave them zoom in, zoom out, and let's just go ahead and click somewhere else. And so now what we have is this pan and zoom feature, but it's really big. So, and it's taking just a moment to render, so just give it a second there. But what we can do is actually free transform this information. Let's see if it'll let me do that. Looks like it's still thinking. But we can resize this or rescale these objects, and so as we pan and zoom, it'll end up being like a picture inside a picture instead of covering up all of our other media in here. So I've got a smaller size. And you can see how it's doing that pan and zoom. The other option I could do is inside this video clip, I already have these layers. I could simply add a blank layer and put it into my timeline here by adding it to the group. Oops, it's adding it as a, gotta make sure it's not a clipping path there. Let's add it to the group. There we go. And when I add it to the group as a layer, I can even have that with some time frame on it, so it acts as a buffer until the balloon has played, and you'll see what's happening here. You can see how there's nothing, and then it goes back. So you can always add other layers to create essentially a pause effect. One other note that is I think of when I think of animation, sometimes I think of sound as well. And some of your video is going to have sound that comes with it. And you can even click on the triangle here and activate the sound. You can fiddle with some of the audio or just mute it, because a lot of times the devices that we use, those smartphones, don't capture sound quite the way we like it. Or we simply want to remove that sound and add an audio track and you can just add an audio track to play underneath your timeline or your animation. Whether you're going to be using the frame features or the timeline features, you have a lot of great options for doing automatic animation features as well as some step-by-step customization.